Hi folks. Now, we've been going through another cold spell here in Scotland, but what I wanted to tell you about today was that it's nothing like what we went through 60 years ago in 1963. Because 1963 was one of the coldest winters on record in Great Britain, and I remember it very well as a wee boy. So that year, in 1963, it started snowing that winter just before Christmas, which was lovely. We had a white Christmas, but then it just carried on and on and on, and the bad weather and the snow continued right through until I think about the end of February, the beginning of March. So that was, a very long, hard winter for us here in Scotland. And remember, as I highlighted in my last video, about heating in houses, most houses in Scotland in those days were heated only by one coal fire, which would be in the living room, and that also heated the hot water for the house. Oh, and also our houses in those days weren't insulated, so very, very cold. Anyway, I remember that year in 1963, the snow was so deep around our village that all the roads were blocked, completely blocked. And I went for a walk with my mum one day up one of the country roads from the village, but the snow was higher than the stone walls that ran along the side of the road, so you couldn't see where the road was, and you couldn't see where the fields were. It was just one huge expanse of flat, wind-blown snow. It was absolutely surreal, and I remember it to this day. Unfortunately, I don't have any photographs of that winter, because those of us of a certain age can remember that taking photographs in those days was a whole different ball game, which involved A, actually owning a camera, not everybody did, B, having previously bought a film, which you might not have, C, knowing how to insert the film correctly, and D, then having the time to take the film to a shop to be processed, and then going back to pick it all up. So you can see how taking photographs really was only done on special events and holidays and such like. Nowadays, hey, everyone can be an instant photographer with their phones, which is great. Anyway, back to the main story. The well-known Scottish newspaper, however, the Press and Journal, recently ran an excellent feature on what that winter in 1963 was like for those living up in the Highlands. Now, the Press and Journal, you may not know, it's a superb, long-established newspaper that serves North and Highland Scotland, and I think it was voted Scottish Newspaper of the Year recently. It was established in 1747, and it's one of Scotland's oldest daily newspapers, and I think one of the longest running newspapers in the world today. Anyway, I'm going to put a link to the article below, and I recommend you read it, especially if you've ever visited the Highlands, as it's quite an amazing read. But here I've got a few interesting snippets that I've taken from it to share with you today. So in Granton and Spey, up in Speyside, temperatures there were down 38 degrees below frost, which in modern equivalent is minus 21 degrees centigrade, or I think minus 6 Fahrenheit. Transport was just a no-go. Trains froze, and then the buses and the lorries, the diesel froze in it. And even at home, the milk was frozen. We'd get milk delivered then, and the milk came in glass bottles. And the cream would freeze and erupt out the top of the bottle, and often the bottom bit of the bottle would be frozen to the ice, and it would crack and you'd be gone. Anyway, so that was pretty bad. For those of you who have driven from Edinburgh to Inverness on the A9 road, you'll know that even now it can be a bit difficult in winter. Well, in 1963, lorry drivers attempting to get to Inverness only got as far as the towns of Newtonmore and Canusie, and that was them. Their vehicles all came to a shuddering standstill. Some drivers attempted to or lit fires underneath the diesel tanks to try and defrost the diesel. And that does sound a little bit scary to me, but anyway, it didn't work. Others over at Dalwhinnie, if you've driven up there, Dalwhinnie is a notorious bad spot for snow. They just abandoned their vehicles, and that did create a huge headache for the RAC, who had to go in and rescue stranded, huge big lorries that were stranded there. But actually, if they'd made it to Inverness, conditions weren't much better there. And one thing in particular which I thought was funny was that the city in those days had gas street lights, and 375 of them weren't working at that time. And it was because the condensation in the underground pipes had frozen solid and the gas couldn't get through. And the lighting inspector just said they'd been fighting a losing battle every week to try and get it. So it was pretty dark in Inverness, no public lighting. However, it wasn't just transport and lighting that was affected. Human beings, their lives were in peril. And there's a story about a young girl aged 6 called Mary Wisner, and she was from the Aberdeenshire village of Fyvie, and she needed urgent medical attention, but the family's isolated cottage was snowed in. So the doctor was called, Dr. Taylor, and he attempted to get through to her, but his car got stuck. So abandoning his car, Dr. Taylor walked 2 miles through the snowdrifts to get to the girl. There she was wrapped in blankets, and they managed to put her in a wooden box in the back of a tractor, but even the tractor couldn't get through the snow. And then her father and I think the driver of the tractor took it in turns to carry her. Eventually they managed to get her into a car and taken away to a hospital. In Strathdon, in the area of Highland Strathdon, a man took ill there, seriously ill, and he had to be dragged on a sledge by the police for over a mile to get to an ambulance which was on the main road. On the railway side, the Inverness Abbey Moor train got stranded at Dava in Murray, near Murray, and for 11 hours the passengers, which included a little baby, were left stuck there awaiting, rescue to try and free them from the train. Snowplows on the trains couldn't get through, but a railman on foot managed to come along with sandwiches and tea, and he reported that the passengers were cheerful, upon his arrival. In the end, they had to dynamite the frozen snowdrifts along that route to clear the railway line. But it wasn't just people also needing rescued. The AA, the Automobile Association, dragged a huge sledge of fodder to 9 bulls who had been trapped on a truck in snowdrifts at Dalwhinnie for 2 days. The truck's driver, George Fraser, said he hit the drifts about 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, and he waited until daybreak, and then he clawed his way a mile through the snowdrifts to try and get help. And he said he had never seen drifts so high. They were about 15 feet high where his lorry was stuck. Further north, up in the Highlands, there was lots of concerns about livestock out on the remote hills and in the glens. And it was the RAF that came to rescue there. It launched a helicopter from Lukers Air Base, and they were dropping hay to animals, sheep and cattle, etc., that were stuck in the snow. So there you go, folks. Whilst it has been very cold here in Scotland just now, I have to tell you from personal experience, this is nothing as compared to that winter of 1963. And until we meet again, I just want to wish you all the very best from Scotland.